Hi there guys, Ian here, and today I'm bringing you a After Effects and Plexus tutorial. Now, this is something people have been asking for, and I finally get to recreate a scene from one of my favourite movies of all time called The Art of Flight. Now, this is a snowboarding film, and in the title sequence, they use a plugin in After Effects called Plexus all the time, and throughout the entire film, they use it a lot. I've actually got the scene up for you here, and I'll just kind of show you what we'll be doing. So, this is the kind of effect we want to do. We've got these tracked points um, which kind of blow around in the wind and kind of track to the points in the leaves, move around, and all the lines kind of go in and out. And a simple but pretty awesome little thing, which I'm going to try and recreate here. And of course, I don't really have the camera or time or patience to go out and shoot something like this. So I actually had a look around online to try and find some decent stock footage, and I actually found a website called Dissolve. Now, this is a really cool kind of stock footage site. As it says here, clips start from $5 and they go up to kind of way over my budget, but there's some pretty awesome stuff in here. After finding the clip I wanted, I kind of went around, watched all their little montages, and some incredible stuff here. You can pretty much create a whole film pretty much just with some of these clips. So yeah, check them out. I'll leave a link below to where you can actually find the site, or you can just go to dissolve.com, whatever. But you get 3 free clips each month, which I think is pretty awesome as well. More or less, they are all 1080p. They go up to 4K, I think. And there's some pretty amazing shots in there, shot mainly on like red cameras, which I don't think I could ever afford in my life. But anyway, I'm going on and on. Let's kind of jump in and start it. So the clip I found, I shall now load up for you. This is a clip I found. It's a little bit grainy, but we can adjust that in After Effects and make it look how we want it to look. And I think for what I want to do, this will be a good example. There's not much movement, which means tracking will be more simple. And yeah, let's just have some fun. So we'll jump into After Effects. So here I've dragged the composition into a new comp, and you can see it plays through. And just to kind of speed this up, let's work at half res. It's a bit slow, I think that's just because of my computer. But yeah, as you can see, if we zoom in here, we've got a bit of noise, and the fastest way I think to remove that would be to go to noise and grain and remove grain, and we'll just change this to final output. And you can see already we get a bit of a cleaner result. And if we just go to kind of fine noise reduction setting and do maybe 2, that looks pretty damn good in my opinion. We've gone from a slightly grainy footage to pretty nice. There may be a bit of blurring around certain places, but I think this works pretty well. So next thing we want to do is actually just render this out as it is, just because the tracker which we'll be using wants you to use a raw footage, but we want the slightly more cleaned up one. So just go to composition, add to render queue, and we'll render this out as a TIFF sequence, but we'll remove the alpha channel. So we've got TIFF sequence, and we will just save this to the desktop under tutorial and make a new folder called sequence, just to hold it all in, and we'll call this footage. Save it out, and we will click render. Now that that's finished rendering out and we've imported it back in, we have our slightly less grainy footage here ready for tracking. So with the footage selected, go to animation and track motion, and this will bring up this window down here as well as a track point. Now, in my opinion, the leaves and grass don't move, they don't scale or rotate, so all we need to do is worry about the position. We're also going to create a null, and we're going to call this track_1. We'll do multiple tracks, and you'll see why later on. And the first point I wish to track is actually the end of this insect here. So we're just going to zoom in and bring it up and just scale this box up as well. The middle one is the object it's tracking, and the outer box is kind of the limitation of where it can search for this object in the middle. So with that done, and the cursor at the start of our timeline, if we just click play here, as you can see, this will dart around. It may not look like it's kind of a bit jumpy, but in this case, because we're zoomed in 400%, that 1 or 2 pixel jump shouldn't make a huge difference, especially when the clip is at 1080p. So now that that's done, we can have a little look at our object, and you can see that this seems fine. Go to the edit target and make sure that track 1 is selected. Go back to the start of our timeline and just click apply. And this box will come up. We want X and Y. And now we'll have a null object, which if we scale down, you can see this sticks to the end of our insect. So we're going to do a couple more of these, and it's important to keep adding the null before. So we'll call this track_2, and go back to our footage, track motion, and select another point. So in this case, we're going to choose maybe another wing, just so we have 2 things which are quite close to each other. So maybe this one down here, and we'll again adjust the box, make sure it's at the start, and click play. The built-in tracker does a pretty good job. You can use other programs to do it, such as Mocha, or a 3D tracker such as Buju, but for this it works pretty well. So make sure track 2 is selected, just click apply, and we have now 2 objects tracked in. And again, we'll just do this a couple more times at different points in our time, in our scene even. So click track motion, and this time we'll do something maybe a little further apart. So with the box selected, we'll drag it over and maybe choose this flower here. So again, with that selected, we'll click play and let this play through. And make sure that the target is track 3. The playhead's at the start of our timeline, and just click apply. And now we have 3 points on our timeline tracked in. And now I'm going to pause the video and add a couple more and come back when I've got all my tracks in. Now that we've got here 7 track points, I think this will be a a good start to our kind of achieving the effect that we want. So now we actually want to put a light onto each of these points in time. And the best way to do this, I found, is just to create a new light, and this we're going to call a track. Everything will come apparent later on, and what we want to do is drag one here and just duplicate them until we have one under each of our nulls. And we just want to parent it, each one to the corresponding null. And this will actually make the light adapt all of the keyframes and positional movement from the null. And then if we just go into the position just by pressing P, we want to zero out all of the position. And so here you can see we have all of our lights connected to the points in our scene. Okay, so to make this look a little bit cleaner, we can select everything here and just press this button next to it called the shy object, and at the top the bit here. And so now we're just left simply with all of our just our footage layer, but in the actual composition we can see the nulls as well as the lights. Now next what we want to do is actually create a flow of lights coming in from the side, and this will be what interacts with the lights here. And for this I actually use Cinema 4D. So if I load this up quickly here, I'll show you what we need to do to create a kind of natural flow of lights across the scene. Now we want to set up the scene exactly how it is in our other composition. So we have 1920 by 1080. Is that right? It looks awfully wide because it's anamorphic. There we are. Square pixels, and the frame rate should match up with this one of 30 frames a second, and the time should be the same at 6:26, and we'll copy that down here. There we are. Next what we want to do is add a camera and just zero that out, make it -1000. We'll have to do some adjustments in After Effects. And next we want to add an emitter and rotate it round as the particles want to emit this way, and just increase the Y size and just drag it off the scene. So now if we click play, you can see we have these particles coming in. Now to make it a little more random, we want the speed to be about 100, the variation 100, rotation just throw in any number, and scale shouldn't really matter. And we want a light as a child of the emitter, and if we just click show objects, you can see now we have these lights coming in and flying across. Now to get a bit more variation, we'll just add a turbulence modifier, and this will just kind of make it a bit wavier and a little more random. And there's too many lights appearing, so we'll just change it down to maybe 3. and I don't really like the scale. There we are, and we'll just change it down to maybe even 2, because we really don't need many. So for the example, this should do, and what we want to do is just click on the emitter, Cinema 4D tags, external compositing, and put that both on the emitter and the light. You may be able to do it with just it on the light, but I haven't experimented enough with this to work out which, so in my opinion it's just best to do both. Next we want to do all frames, go to save, choose a save location, so this is in the tutorial and lights, and then we just go down to the compositing file, click save with all of these checked, click save, and just call this lights as well, and that is us done in Cinema 4D. So if we open up the AEC file we just created, you'll see in here, we load the composition up, we have our lights appearing, which is pretty cool. So we can delete these bottom 2 groups and the camera, and what we want to do is just line this up with the scene. So if we grab all of these and parent them to a null object, this way we can actually control everything from here. If we make it a 3D layer, we can drag it over so it appears from the right direction, as there's no current camera in the scene, other scene even. And if we scale this up and move it down, maybe 200, and just drag it over. Here we have our lights which will interact, and these can stay as lights, and we just need to copy this and paste it into our other scene. So now we have some lights kind of floating in, and these will be our sort of particles. So we can hide the null layer as well as these lights here, as we don't need to see them in our timeline. And now we can finally, 17 minutes in, start with Plexus. So if we create a new, not shape, but a new solid, we'll call this Plexus, and we'll just use the plugin called Plexus by the company Robite, and we can start working here. So if we add geometry and layers, what we want are lights and point lights, and this will be called a light, and straight away we should be able to, if I've named it right, a track even, my bad, we should see these lights appear, the ones that are our tracked ones. And if we duplicate the layers object and name this lights, we should get our other ones coming in. Now the reason we're going to have these different is because we want the points a different size, as well as the interaction different as well. So we'll call this one group 1 and this one group 2. The points renderer will be first set to group 1, and if we duplicate it, change it to group 2, and just shrink these right down to maybe 3. And here we have our lights appearing across the scene, very small, and now we kind of just want to connect them together. So if we hide all them, what we want is a renderer and lines, and we're just going to increase the maximum distance So we can kind of see the effect appearing here. And this is pretty much the effect. Now it's just a matter of refining and tuning this to how we want it to look. So these points are way too big, so we're going to change these to maybe 5. And what we're also going to do is just add a little flare to each one, and this will give you the nice glowing effect you see in the example. So we'll create a new solid, call it flare, and use Video Copilot's optical flares to track the lights, and we call it go to source type, track lights, beginning with A, and now I've done that wrong. We're going to call it beginning with light even, and we're just going to clear all of this and just add a simple glow, which we're going to shrink down and go to the gamma section. Just turn that down a bit as well. Oh, I did do it right first time. We want it beginning with A, because we want the little lights which attract to it. So we're going to set this to screen, and you can see now we have the glow on it, but it's too big, so we're just going to scale it down until we get something which is pretty subtle. So this is pretty cool, and what we can also do in the Plexus object under renderer is triangulation. And if we increase the distance, you can see this adds a kind of triangle between them. And if we just set this to something like 1, then not too many will appear. And we can also lower the opacity to maybe 12. So it's a very subtle effect, but in my opinion looks really good. Maybe even lower it even more, so we get this very subtle effect kind of flying in. Now you can add as many flying lights as you want, but the more you add, the slower your scene will get and the harder it'll be to work with. So this is more or less the effect that was done in Art of Flight. They may have had more track points, different settings with the lines. Of course, you can make them longer if you want a more kind of connected look. You can also make it so the lines are drawn only between different groups. So in that case, lines won't be drawn between the lines dotted together. They'll only be drawn between the tracked points and the floating in points. Or you could just do same group, so only the ones tracked will connect and the ones flying in will be completely different. For mine though, different groups works fine, as long as you just keep the maximum distance down. In fact, all groups works, and just lower it so you don't get too many connecting points, because it's not meant to be a kind of over the top effect. And we can also just lower down the triangulation even further to maybe 5, just so you almost get a kind of just a lightning effect rather than making it look like it's anything different. We can also set the mode to screen, just so it kind of lightens up the background a bit more. And finally, we can just do a little bit of color correction, and I'm going to do this in a new composition just by dragging the footage composition into a new one. This way everything is on one layer rather than kind of very messy if I was to uncheck this. So we're just going to work from this one, and I'm actually going to do a kind of fake camera zoom just by making a keyframe on frame 0 at 100%, and at the end we'll have 110. So you can see here we have this nice camera zoom, and we can also change the anchor point so when it zooms more towards our insect over here. Now for the color correction, we're just going to make a new adjustment layer. We're going to bring in a tint, a curves, some grain using Magic Bullet Misfire Grain, and also using their frames we're going to have a letterbox. So obviously this looks horrible at the moment. We're going to change the letterbox to 2.1. We're going to uncheck color noise and make the amount 15, 10, 10, 10, just for a subtle grain look. We're going to make the tint maybe something like 30%, just so it's slightly saturated. And for the curves, we're just going to darken it a little bit there and bring it up, so creating a basic S shape. Under green, we will bring this up a little bit, and under the reds, we'll bring it down. The next thing we'll add is a vignette. It's always best to name your layers. I really should have done that with that. So call that color correction, and the vignette, we'll just add an ellipse and just double click it and it'll create an ellipse around your whole shape. Change it to subtract down here and just increase the feather amount and increase the mask expansion and change the opacity down to maybe like 10 or 20. So we get a very subtle look to it, but it looks pretty cool. And one final thing you might notice is the Plexus lines look a little too sharp. So under our Plexus object, we're just going to go to blur, fast blur, and 2. And maybe even 1. And this will just help to kind of blend it into the scene a little bit better. I'll render this out so you can see the final result, as I think this will take quite a while to kind of scrub through, as recording and rendering is always a nightmare. But again, I can't stress how good this stock footage site was. I didn't think I would find something which would work as well as this. I've wanted to try this effect for a while now, but it's always been too rainy here up north to actually go out and film. So yeah, big thanks to Dissolve for the footage here. This one only cost $5, so it's actually one of the cheapest ones on the site, and the quality was incredible. A little bit grainy, but that's just how it was filmed, and we managed to remove that in one click. So brilliant footage to work with. It tracked beautifully, and we're left with this pretty cool effect. And it didn't take that long to make. So I really hope you've learned something. If you need any footage, there'll be a link in the description below to this clip, as well as the site in general, so you can download it and play around. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. This has been Ian, and I shall see you next time.